30 seconds. Esta reunião está sendo transmitida ao vivo. Okay. Well, welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. We have been asked to come to give a small presentation on how we ended up in Paris, Dakota after quite a global adventure. We both used to work for Greenpeace International, doing some really exciting environmental campaigns. And I think that's part of why it might be interesting for you. And how we went from living in the big city in Copenhagen in Denmark to sort of changing that out with fields and dogs and cows and chickens in Paris, Dakota, how we ended up. It's taken quite some years to get to here. It's been a very interesting journey. So, who are we?
I'm Elizabeth. I was born in England and grew up there, and then I moved around quite a bit as an adult. I lived in Argentina and Denmark, and now I live here.
And I'm Rasmus, and I was born in Denmark and sort of grew up in the same kind of area as Paris, Dakota and Denmark. So lots of farming, lots of pigs. And then moved to the big city, Copenhagen. I was there for 12 years working before we changed it all out. And then our family has grown since then. We have a Portuguese daughter now called Rosa. She's the angry looking baby, you can see there. With our dogs, and we have 2 cats. We have 3 chickens right now. We used to have a lot, but then the fox came, and we plan on having growing the farm even more. And we will show you pictures later so you can see what kind of place we have. So on a world map.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was born here. Rasmus was born. And then, but we didn't know each other, right? So I eventually moved here to Argentina. This is when I started to work with Greenpeace. Rasmus, working for Greenpeace in Denmark, went on an adventure on a Greenpeace ship to the Arctic. This was how we met. We worked on the same campaign. I was here smashing out content basically while he was facing off with Russian people with guns on massive ships, trying to protect the whales.
And stop oil extraction in an area that used to be covered by ice. The second there was no ice anymore, the Russians came, the Norwegians came, everyone wanted to start drilling there. But I'll tell you more about this campaign in a bit.
So we met online, you could say. And eventually I went to live in Denmark. Then we left Denmark together and moved to Portugal. I continue working for Greenpeace. I now work with Southeast Asia and Taiwan and the US on the campaign about fisheries. I'll talk a bit more later. And Rasmus also works with clients in America and the Caribbean.
And really short, for Greenpeace, what we did, both of us, was digital campaigning, meaning how do you take some sort of climate message and compress it and publish it on the internet so it's really fast for people in their Instagram feeds and TikTok and whatever they're using to understand what is the problem. Okay, what is the problem? What can I do sitting in my couch? So that could be petitions to put to push politicians into making better legislation, or it could be just to spite a world leader like Putin that goes up there and doesn't care about how he's treating the environment. And the campaign I went to up in the Arctic was twofold. It was one, to stop oil exploration. And the way, I will show you a video, but the way they do that is with large air cannons. They blast sonar into the seabed to find the reservoirs of oil under it. But you can imagine when they use this explosion rig, seismic blasting rig, and they keep making these explosions, all the wildlife, all the whales that have this fat deposit in their head they use for sonar as well. Imagine how this insane pressure, this insane decibels they're sending into the ocean, what's it doing to them. And before we started the campaign in the Arctic Ocean, there was a mass death of a species of whales called narwhals. They look like fairy tale creatures. They don't look real. But they have this fat deposit that killer whales also have and the dolphins also have. And unfortunately, they got pushed into the Arctic rivers because they were fleeing the sounds. And then winter came and the rivers froze to ice and they couldn't escape. So there was a mass death. And of course, when you ask the players up there searching for oil, they all said that it was irrelevant. It had nothing to do with what they were doing, these examinations of the seabed. So we were up there to document that they were lying, essentially, bearing witness. So our time with Greenpeace, you want to start with you?
Okay, so yeah, I was in Argentina. I worked for Save the Arctic campaign, which couldn't be further from the Arctic, but that's how I ended up working for Greenpeace, because I happened to be there and I could speak English and I love communication. And so they were looking for someone to manage the digital side of the campaign. So I did a lot of coordination between, so Greenpeace is a huge international organization and they have offices in over 40 countries, I think.
More, but yeah.
Many countries, and the Save the Arctic campaign was one of their global campaigns. So it's kind of relevant to everyone because it's so crucial to the climate. And so I would coordinate between many different offices, changing content to different languages, etc. And then I worked also on the forest campaign. The boreal forest is the forest in the sort of more northern hemisphere. It's the largest forest on Earth. And then you did Lego,
which is all sort of part of the Save the Arctic campaign. So everyone knows Lego, right? And in Denmark is the producer of Lego. We invented it. We have a very large sort of play park there, Legoland it's called. I think it's the biggest one in the world. Only the US have made a bigger one. And a big part of that park was lots of Shell commercials. And you know, Shell, the oil company, they were in partnership with Lego. And Lego was sort of greenwashing Shell's, what could you say, like how people view them. And they made it into toys to small kids as if Shell was the good guy. And if you look at the history of oil companies, Shell are one of the worst ones. Every time their oil rigs explode and oil comes out, they run away from their responsibility. So that was sort of a campaign trying to block the partnership between Lego and Shell. It was a very interesting campaign. One of the things we did was a fun action inside Legoland. We had made little small Greenpeace activists, little small Greenpeace boats, and then in their installation of a big Shell oil rig, we put all the Greenpeace people there and we left without no one knowing, and the park opened and all of a sudden they were sort of demonstrating against themselves without knowing. But it was a very cheeky way of doing it, like no destruction, no nothing, totally peaceful demonstrations.
Violent,
non-violent.
direct action.
And go ahead.
But just so that with all that, we spend a lot of time being very aware and very up close with a lot of information about the climate and food crisis and biodiversity crisis. And ultimately, it kind of led both of us to experience something called burnout, which I don't know if you've heard of, but it's like a kind of running out of juice and starting to find it really difficult to work at the pace we had been. And that led us to start exploring a bit further, how did we really want to lead our lives?
Should we do the
So
video?
before we move on to that, here's just the example from the campaigns that we did.
So this is the biggest campaign video that we went to the Arctic to actually shoot with our cameras, right? We went up and confronted the Russian ships to shoot the technology they were using. When I say shoot, not shoot, like with a camera, shoot. These dragging out of the ship at 4 kilometers of air cannons. Making these explosives for the fleet.
More impactful on their face.
It's so powerful when the photographers put their cameras in to shoot the underwater footage. Every camera does it for us. couldn't use it anymore. Only the SD card had that footage of the explosion, and everything else was destroyed in the camera.
Yeah, the decibels are louder than a plane taking off, louder than a gun firing. Some of the other comparisons that we made, but dangerously loud.
Yes. Go to the next. Yeah, it always sits. And this is the Lego campaign.
Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of a team. Everything is awesome.
Real toys that they were selling most of them.
Living on a dream. Everything is better when we stick together. Side by side, you and I gonna win forever. Let's party forever. We're the same, I'm like you, you're like me. We're all working in harmony. Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of a team. Everything is awesome when you're living on a dream. Everything is awesome.
So there was divided opinions about this campaign, if that was going too far or not. But it actually worked, and Shell and Lego is no longer in partnership after this campaign. Okay, so the situation is when you work in an NGO, it can be really hard to stop working, and your friends and colleagues will sort of what's that?
No, I wanted to leave it.
Okay. And I had lived in Copenhagen for 12 years at this point. I worked, before I worked for Greenpeace, I worked in tech companies and telecommunications and all sorts of things, and thought I was going to chase career and higher pay and sort of work your way up the ladder like everyone else was doing. But I could just sense that my stress levels limit. This is Copenhagen in the winter as the background. And there might be 2 months of good weather in Denmark, and then the rest of it is even worse than Paris, Dakota in the winter. It's a very dark, wet, stressed place. And then you moved in with me in Copenhagen.
And I came from Argentina, again, Buenos Aires, Latino culture, and very exciting and very open and friendly. And it was a big culture shock for me to move to Denmark. It was really hard to make friends. And yeah, I found this just so different from what I was used to. So it was a hard landing. And I threw myself into work. I worked really hard. I was working on the Arctic campaign, then I began working on the forest campaign. Then I got split over 2 global roles. So I was doing 50% on one campaign, 50% on another campaign. And yeah, this all kind of contributed to a bit of a crash. And we had to think really hard about what we wanted to do next, because we weren't enjoying this way of life. I remember feeling frustrated that I would walk from work to my home, and that there were shops each side of me, and I felt like they were pulling at me, come and buy something, come and buy something. It just felt like this consumeristic culture was like very visceral experience. So we started to talk and explore new ideas. And we knew that given everything we learned from the time at Greenpeace and all the campaigns we worked on, we could see it's very clear to us that things aren't working. The systems, the way they are not working. Agriculture is doing more harm than good, and it became a very core part of what we wanted to do, is to be able to grow food. We were in Copenhagen with a balcony about this big, and we had two window boxes Yeah, I don't think we even managed to grow much in them.
With walls this thin, you could like hear your neighbor fart. There was no privacy. You have to imagine a building from the 1700s. That was, yeah.
Not that you can't grow, I don't wanna, yeah, like you can grow amazing things on a balcony. I've seen incredible projects that people have done on a balcony on a very small space. But we had bigger ambitions. We wanted to be on the land. We wanted to feel the ground. So
One more incredibly frustrating thing was, do you remember Obama? You must have been very young when Obama was still president. But lots of the victories we got with Greenpeace in those years was because Obama was quite a good leader for the US and was ready to sort of make some not financially sound decisions, but good for the future. And then you know who came after Obama? Mr. Orange Man, that sort of just rolled everything back. Every single victory we've gotten for 6 years, he removed it in 6 months. That was also a big part of why it's hard to stay optimistic and work so hard on it. So what I needed personally was also to build something that was still there the day after. Imagine you make a digital campaign, you work for it for 6 months, you make videos, and then it's just gone. And people are on in their scrolling on the social media, right? And everybody forgets about it. So I just needed to dig a hole that was actually there the day after, if that makes sense. Something that wouldn't just disappear immediately. So
we bought a van.
I sold everything. I sold my apartment, everything we had in Copenhagen, all my furniture, everything we sold, and we bought a Ford Transit from 2000.
In the UK, because it's way cheaper.
Way cheaper.
And then we drove to Portugal. We thought we would explore Europe. We were going for it. Let's check out lots of places. I was quite curious about some more Eastern Europe, but you know what? We actually didn't really go anywhere else. We came here and started to explore Portugal, and we already felt some kind of connection growing really quickly. So we stayed here mostly. I think we popped to Spain at one point. But yeah, so don't know if you recognize any of these places, possibly, but there's the Algarve and yeah, lots of places along the coast, Alentejo, and then you see Porto there at the top in the middle.
Just how beautiful this country is. It's absolutely crazy how much beauty is here. And the country is so different, the south versus the north versus the center, and the coastline, amazing. I started surfing here for the first time and had so much fun with that. So we traveled, this is not exactly the route we traveled in that 1 year. But it goes to show we sort of tried to see the whole country and every single part of it. But we entered in the north to go to the south, and from the first day we landed in Portugal, we sort of knew the north would be the best for our project because there's water, there's mountain, there's the microclimate of Jerez that has these weather systems that they don't have in the south. So it was more question of where in the north would we like to go? Go through.
Yeah. Once we kind of honed in on the north, we'd gone south, we came back up. We started to get more interested and invested in this area, and so we discovered more. We look at the municipality website, and we saw, wow, hey, there's like a lot of cool things going on here. You have like a massive vegan conference and mushroom foraging workshops and like all kinds of different things that we felt, we just felt resonant with. It felt good. And then we start to view some properties, and the people that we met just from being around, the people that we met were so lovely and friendly and welcoming. Everyone's like, yeah, this is so great. We want younger people to come and live here. And yeah, we could already begin to sense the community energy here. Also, we were conscious about the climate and everything, so we knew that there was a heavy rainfall here. This is nice. And looking at models like into the future, that this was a place with potentially good water security.
I think the culture of Portugal, if you try to compare that to Danish culture, Danish is the coldest, most get away from me culture you will probably find. So that complete difference in how people meet each other, that it's okay to have eye contact, it's okay to smile at each other. We're both like this, so I never felt really at home in Denmark, this whole, that you're not really allowed to interact with each other. And I think now, after we've lived in Portugal for a while, if we go visit my family in Denmark, it's just even crazier how cold it is there. So that's something we're really attracted to, for sure. And the fact that you go around and you see people in their 60s and 70s, the way they grow their land here is actually what younger people are trying to call all sorts of trendy things now, permaculture and no dig, and they're doing it. They've been doing it for hundreds of years here. So imagine how much you can learn from people that's been doing this for generations and gotten that from their grandparents. That was a big part of it. So we found an old farm.
So we found our property, and one of the biggest things that appealed to us with this place was the trees. It had many mature oak trees already. Most of the land covered with very big oak trees. And for the kind of methods that we're interested in, this is a huge bonus. If you start a food forest project from scratch, then for the canopy level, you're looking at 20 plus years to get to the point of having a canopy. And we already had a canopy with this place. So
we will explain that. We'll explain that in a bit with the canopy and why it's important.
Yeah, so here's like the aerial view of the quinta. There's our house. We've got two little cabins up here. Oh wait, one's there actually hiding. And here, outhouse. So we've been there for 5 years now. It's been through a lot of transformations, and we've taken several approaches and then realized and learned more and reassessed, and we've learned so much just from being there. Get to know the land, the way it works, the things that, the way the light falls, where the sun hits, Right, when we first moved in, I started to grow food down here and didn't have very much success. And now we're focused on food growing up here, where we have a lot more sun. Anyway.
And so much cleaning. We moved in, the farm hadn't been used for over 25 years. It was completely abandoned, and there was 2 plants there, and they were so close to each other you couldn't walk. And you know, these plants in Portugal in late summer, it turns into dry twig, and you can always just look at it and it catches fire. So the first huge thing was to make sure that this whole place didn't want to burn anymore. Sandra can remember this. So a lot of trimming, a lot of cleaning, a lot of trying to get some plants to give up so anything else can live there instead of these 2 species that comes in. It's 2 species that comes in once you stop agriculture, once you stop driving tractors on it and you stop compacting it all the time. These are the 2 plants that wants to come up. So then you have to change sort of the environment so other plants can also live there. So that would be the popular term, I'd say. Now, have you heard about, I can't ask you a question, but permaculture? So permaculture is quite simply a lens for viewing the world and our problems through nature's patterns and systems to ethically provide benefit for all people, nature, and our collective future. I just sort of leave it at that. So essentially, it's a system that doesn't run on a deficit, a system that can sustain itself. You don't always have to bring output from the outside and put it back in. So,
as our good friend said, you mostly put.
You put.
And sometimes you take.
Yeah, not as much if you can avoid it. And the challenges with permaculture is, no, you couldn't scale it up to feed 8 billion people. But if, like she said, even on your balcony, you had a tiny permaculture setup, you could at least grow yourself tomatoes and potatoes and save that money in the supermarket. It's not the idea that you're 100% self-sustainable. It is that if everyone has sort of a version of this system going, we're just in a better situation than like during COVID, where all of a sudden the supermarkets didn't have anything anymore and X cost 20 euros. So it's an idea of not being self-sufficient, but having more to supply our own life with and the community that we're in. So this is our nursery.
It's just the very early days. Yeah, we had a nursery. So there's like baby plants here and here. So also we've done a lot of work on populating the land from the plants we already have. So we established, for example, oregano. We have one oregano plant that it grew from seed, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it became like a little bush. And then from the bush, they took many pieces and put them in a pot, and then they grow roots, and then you can plant that out. And so from one bush, you propagate many plants. So with the amount of land we had, it's not, I don't know if it's feasible, but it's not smart to go and buy that amount of plants from a store. We've learned we can actually produce it for free. Over here, you can see some cabbage going to flower. We've done a lot of seed saving in the last few years. Again, we're still establishing, like, to the point of being able to produce a lot of food. Every year there's a little bit more, but we're also producing seeds and other plants and so on. And mulch. We're going to use the word mulch a lot. Mulch is like, in Portugal, I think you say lixo. It's the Greek, like waste, leaves, plant matter, anything.
What you burn here usually.
Often people burn it, yeah. We love it.
Just a little note more, the huge advantage of taking seeds, say from a supermarket, growing it out just one cycle and using those seeds the year after, is that then that plant has sort of learned something new about the climate it's in, the soil it's in, the humidity it's in. If you keep just going back to the supermarket seeds, it comes from some clone they've taken from some greenhouse somewhere. So it's much better to create local varieties. Then the critics would say, but then you're not sure it will taste as good or give as much. Well, it's probably a price that you're willing to pay if you have to water it a lot less or it gets less sick. So we work a lot on making our own local versions of the plants. So here you have the canopy.
Right, yeah, so this is sort of the principle of food forest, is to grow a forest-like environment that gives a lot of consumable products. So canopy trees at the top. This is why we were so excited about the oaks. That's the biggest, like the top story. And then the lower story would be smaller fruit trees. And then you've got berry bushes, herbs and plants, and then root vegetables and plants. Ground cover, like grass, clover, strawberries, mushrooms. The mycelial layer is hugely important. And the vertical layer, which is vines, climbing plants like grapes and passion fruit and so on. Again, it's like taking things that already exist in nature and then helping it along, putting things in places where they can thrive. It's really working hand in hand with nature, just following the codes that are already out there to learn from. And then the permaculture kind of set up, we haven't really done this. It's not
kind of done it.
Yeah, sort of, but it's not ordered like this. like nothing in life. But yeah, like you have the home zone where the people live and the animals live, then you grow food, and then you graze your animals. You grow trees for fruit, flowers for pollinators. Maybe you have bigger animals too, and then you can do your own tree cutting because you grow forest, etc. So it's kind of like homestead principle.
And it's important, I think, that it doesn't have to be permaculture where you follow every single rule that the permaculture people have defined. Take the elements from whatever works and try it out. I think mostly the zones is to keep what you need tomorrow close to the house and what you only need once a year further away. It's just sort of old, like I say, farmer logic. Here in Portugal, say, of course you have to do it like this. But this is how they teach young people how to farm again, because we've sort of forgotten it. Fewer people want to farm.
Worth noting as well that permaculture is essentially just indigenous-based land practices that have been appropriated by white guys.
So very short, there's a massive amount of rain in Alto Minho, as you know for sure. So one of our projects is how can we sort of capture this water? And you can do that in tanks and you can use your roofs. It's insane how much water you can collect in one winter here. And that's an ongoing thing. We're trying to figure out how to just capture as much rainwater as we can in the winter and then slowly use it in the summer instead of using pipes or redirecting a river, that's a whole nother story I won't get into today.
We're not gonna
Right. So building soil.
make-
Let's talk a bit about it. So in recent years, especially, the science on the sort of cooperation between fungi and trees has really come a lot of new knowledge out. So for the first, they've established now that mushrooms and trees interconnect each other in the root web, and they send signals to trees and mushrooms alike. So mushrooms, what are they? I think the easiest way, or how I look at it, is that it's sort of like the teeth of the forest floor. Everything you drop on it, the fungus will eat it and will chew it up. That's what it does. If a tree dies, the fungus knows, it goes up through the trunk and it starts killing the tree and taking it apart again. But when the tree's alive, it's its friend, right? So they've now established with measuring equipment that electricity will fire through the roots from the mycelium to the trees and vice versa. And they've also figured out that trees knows their kin, which is insane. Kin, I mean children. So if an oak drops an acorn, that acorn actually puts its root down, the mother tree will know that's my baby and give more nutrients to that one instead of the other acorn from the other tree. So there's even family structures in trees. And I think this shows a lot about how little we know. And what do you do to trees in farmland? You cut it down to get full sun. There's still a lot of interesting knowledge to be had from it. And here you can see the connection between the mycelium and the tree roots, how it goes together. There's sort of a symbiotic relationship like you see in lots of other natural situations. And this is something, back to mulch, we take the lixo, the Portuguese would normally burn, because it's easy for them to just come and dump it on our property. It's our problem, and we celebrate all day because it's free of charge. And then you literally just spread as much as you can all over the place, and you'll see in a week, if it's wet, the mushroom will have come up through it and already started processing that into new topsoil. And topsoil is essentially these expensive 20-kilogram bags you go to Leroy Merlin or Bricolage and buys. The compost you put on top for your gardens. We try to produce it ourselves.
And the reason we do that is because the soils become degraded. But because of the methods of farming and cleaning the land and stripping things away and growing one crop and the same crop, the soil becomes depleted of nutrient and food. So by adding biomass, you're bringing more life back in. Like there couldn't be more life in a dead stick than in a live branch, you know, because the amount of bacteria and fungi that are growing in it. So yeah, our neighbors don't understand sometimes why we want to bring all the lixo. Like, but we want more lixo. And then we don't have enough to spread across our whole land. So we focus on where we have fruit trees growing, they get a big bed of mulch. Where we're going to plant something new, that gets a lot of mulch. Where the tomatoes are growing, because they got blight again this year, the tomatoes got like a disease that bounces up from the soil. But if you put mulch on top of the soil, that they can't connect. So then you protect them.
One more thing on soil quality. One of the reasons the desert is spreading so fast in Spain, as it is right now, is years of tilling the soil, growing crops, and then not adding any sort of spongy material back to the soil that can actually hold water. So when it rains, the water won't even accept it. It just washes off. It's called hydrophobic soil, which is a huge problem. And we had lots of hydrophobic soil on our land as well. It started raining, it would just run off the land and nothing would get into the soil. But adding biomatter makes the soil into a sponge so it can hold water again.
Whenever they till, they destroy these connections. So like everything's destroyed enough to start again and start again and start again. Like we till sometimes, it's not that you shouldn't, but it's the constant tilling, constant destroying of the world beneath. Like there's a whole world beneath our feet. So here's mulch in action. So here, right at the beginning, we had these huge amounts of branches from neighbors and stuff that we just piled up along. So that all gradually decomposed. It went down. Like you can't even see that was there anymore. It's kind of flat here now. And here are beds where we've got some berries. This was spring. I wish we had a picture from now because these berry bushes are like spilling out over the path. So yeah, here we just built up with branches around the edge and then add the leash or the mulch in the middle. And just keep doing it. Whenever we can, we do more.
I think we only have 7 minutes left. So this is something called Hugelkultur piles. So you can see the steam coming up. That's like the natural temperature of the pile. As the bacteria starts working, the temperature goes up, and in the morning you'll see it steaming like a chimney. This is a very used technique. They even use this for industrial food making because it produces a lot. So first you take like massive logs of tree that goes right on the floor, right on the grass. Then you take smaller branches and then you add lots of this leash on top. And in just one winter, you can sow into it next summer. And it's like a system that holds the water. You don't have to water it at all. In August, now, if you do like this and stick a finger in, it will still be wet after 40 degrees. It's an amazing technique. Oh. Right, something on low impact buildings. It's like I've built quite a lot of structures. This is a new chicken coop / sheep house that I'm building. And this is the cabin we told you about earlier. That's literally because our house is so tiny, we can't even have our family visit us right now. There's nowhere they can sleep. So we've built some accommodation for them to sleep on. And when I say low impact, it is that there's no electricity, there's no sewers, no septico, and there's not even a drop of cement used. So all we do is we put a bit of gravel into a little ditch, and then you put a rock on top of it, and then you put the foundation straight there. Everything is put in with screws. So the day you don't want the building anymore, you can disassemble in an afternoon. You can take the gravel out, put some soil, and you wouldn't even know there's been a building there. That's just the philosophy that you won't find any foundations or anything when the building goes down. Temporary structures. This is sort of a toilet structure where we also keep our garden tools. So like a shed that overhangs, and again, everything is with screws. What does it give us?
Here's some of the results. Yeah, the potatoes, they grew in the raised beds that would have the steam coming off. So that was an amazing method for growing potatoes. They've been really, really happy in there. And yeah, see, cucumber, eggplant, courgette, broccoli, cabbage.
Food.
Sweet potatoes are amazing.
Sorry.
Oh, and yeah, okay. We've made like you can use medicinal plants. This is calendula, really nice for the skin. I made some oil using that.
Teas?
Teas, yeah. We do a lot of flowers and a lot of herbs for making tea.
Food, and I make the food. I'm the big chefy guy that produces the tomatoes into tomato sauce. So in January, when you're really tired of winter, you can sort of take a piece of summer out of your freezer and still cook it. It's amazing. It's one of the best things in the world. Our own chickpeas, our own bread, our own eggs from our chickens. And now we want to start making more meat protein. So we're also going to start killing some of our animals because it's just so much better than supermarket food. At least you know the animal has had a decent life.
Right. None of this would have happened without community and many significant steps along the way involved a lot of help from a lot of friends. So here's a few. Like when we built the cabins, a whole bunch of people showed up to help. We've had people staying, doing little projects. This was the first chicken coop being cobbed. And our neighbors who have given us countless seeds, baby plants, cuttings, like most of our garden is transplanted from other gardens around us. And now we hold sometimes community events. We had a women's circle recently. And
just the way we sort of got accepted immediately by the people around us in the beginning, we didn't understand a word they were saying and vice versa. But just such a nice way to arrive, and the neighbors has been supportive since day one for our project. And I think it also has to do with other houses in Corda might be bought by a very rich man. He'll build a swimming pool and go back to Lisbon. But we actually came to stay, and we were even here in the darkness of winter, and wanted to live here year round and create a life. And I think Rosa was one of the first kids born in how many years? Anyway, our child was like one of the new generation that will take Paris de Corda into the future. Yeah, lots of my building projects would have been impossible without help.
So yeah, we've spent a lot of time as much time as we've spent on the land, we've sat with our friends and our neighbors, listening and learning and understanding why they grow what they grow, what works, what doesn't work, when they plant this, when they do this, when they do that. Just invaluable, and wouldn't be as far along without all those people that have supported us.
100%.
So,
We have had our butts saved by neighbors many times already. And then just very last, this is a video from like 4 days ago, so you can just see how our land looks. And that's the last of it. I put really annoying music on it, because I'm gonna mute the music. Sorry,
no, I don't.
I hate the music.
Look at Joni.
Wow, it's bad quality, you can't see anything.
Was
That's awful.
sorry.
When if it's small, it's better. That's my biggest helper.
The tractor.
Yeah, it's like having 4 volunteers at all times, so you don't have to feed them or tell them anything, they just get it. Wow, that's really strange video.
That's Rosa's playing in that tent.
So the top terrace that you saw in the satellite photo and the structures. Surfboards. We put pipes and water from our own borehole. Build our own steps. So there's not really any way to sort of traverse the terraces before, so we had to build everything when we moved in. I think our time is up, but this sort of shows it, though.
A lot of green.
It's a jungle. Right, I think that's 40 minutes. We're going to stop, I think, if there's any questions.